Whoa! I never thought about that!
Today, we're diving deep into the ledger of time, from barter all the way to Bitcoin. We're going to explore exactly how humanity engineered and then completely reimagined the very concept of exchange. It's a pretty wild ride, so let's get right into it. Picture this. You've got a literal mountain of excess apples, and all you really want is some bread. So you go to the baker. But the baker, he's allergic to apples. Or maybe he just really wants some milk today. And just like that, the trade completely stalls out. Economists actually have a name for this headache. They call it the double coincidence of wants. Basically, for a simple barter system to actually work, the stars have to perfectly align. You both have to want exactly what the other person has. And this massive friction wasn't just some minor inconvenience in early human history. It was literally the catalyst that forced us to invent a middleman for value. So how did we fix it? Well, the entire evolutionary arc of exchange is really just a story of us hacking away at the friction of whatever era we were in. We moved from that inefficient barter system to heavy commodity money, then to paper money based on trust, up to bank-controlled digital money, and finally reaching decentralized cryptocurrency. Every single leap forward made trading faster, more scalable, and just fundamentally different. Our first real fix was commodity money. We basically settled on universally valued items. Think gold, silver, or even salt. Fun fact, salt was actually used for Roman soldier rations, which is where we get the word salary. These items worked so well because they were inherently rare, they were incredibly durable, and you could easily divide them up. You didn't need to find a baker who specifically wanted your apples anymore. You just needed gold. But let's be real, lugging around heavy sacks of metal is incredibly risky, and it's a huge pain for large purchases. So, governments and early banks came up with paper money. Now, this transition to fiat money, that represents a massive leap in human psychology. We actually replaced the physical, tangible value of something like gold with something totally abstract: institutional trust. Fiat money only has value because the government says it does, and because, well, we all collectively agree to believe them. Fast forward to the digital age, and convenience came with a bit of a catch. Money essentially became invisible. It turned into just glowing numbers moving between bank accounts, credit cards, and online portals. And while the format evolved, the underlying power structure didn't. Every single transaction you make today goes through a gatekeeper. It's heavily controlled by centralized banks and regulated by governments who can literally freeze your accounts or dictate the rules of the game. So you don't actually hold your digital money. A bank holds it for you. And that brings us to an absolute paradigm shift. Yes, digital money is fast, but it relies entirely on deeply centralized bank control. Cryptocurrency takes that digital convenience, but completely strips out the central authority. There's no bank CEO, there's no corporate server farm dictating the terms. It's just a borderless exchange. You can send value across the globe as easily as sending an email, and it's entirely permissionless. The spark that lit this whole fire happened right after the 2008 financial crash. That's when an anonymous creator, or maybe a group of creators, we still don't know, using the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, introduced Bitcoin. By publishing this brilliant white paper for a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, Nakamoto proved that we absolutely no longer needed centralized institutions to process digital payments. It was a total game changer that challenged thousands of years of established monetary authority. So what is cryptocurrency at its core? Simply put, it's digital money secured by incredibly complex mathematics, rather than physical bank vaults or armed security guards. And it relies on three main pillars. First, it operates without any central authority, making it completely decentralized. Second, every single transaction is publicly verifiable, which makes it transparent. And third, the cryptographic math ensures it remains locked down and highly secure. Okay, that naturally leads us to the million Bitcoin question, right? How does this actually work? If there isn't a central server keeping track of who owns what stops someone from just copying and pasting digital coins and making themselves rich? Well, the engine running the whole show is called the blockchain. I know, the word gets thrown around a lot and it can sound like intimidating tech jargon, but at its foundation, blockchain is simply the unique architecture this decentralized network uses to organize and absolutely secure its data. Think of the blockchain like a giant, globally shared digital notebook. Whenever a transaction happens, it gets written down on a page. The sheer genius here is its immutability. Once the ink dries on that page, it can literally never be altered, erased, or messed with. And because everyone participating in the network holds an exact copy of this notebook, it forms a perfectly transparent, unchangeable record of absolute truth. Now, why is this secure? It all comes down to distribution. The ledger isn't locked away in one single bank manager's desk. The data is heavily encrypted, and exact copies are stored across millions of independent computers all over the world. If a bad actor wanted to sneak in and alter a transaction to enrich themselves, they'd have to simultaneously hack over half the computers on the planet. By completely removing that single central point of failure, the network becomes exceptionally resilient. So, let's say you hit send. The actual flow is brilliantly streamlined. First, you create the transaction. Then, this massive distributed network jumps in and verifies that you actually have the funds you're trying to send. Next, your transaction gets bundled with a bunch of others into a block of data. And finally, that block is permanently chained to the ledger. The funds arrive right in the recipient's wallet, and a middleman never even touches them. But how do we keep this massive global verification machine running? Enter mining. People use their computers to race and solve immensely complex cryptographic puzzles to verify these blocks. The winner of that race earns the right to add the block to the chain, and for their hard work, they're rewarded with newly minted cryptocurrency. It's this mathematically elegant incentive structure that secures the entire network and issues new currency all at the same time. All right, we've got the mechanics down, but we still have to tackle the elephant in the room. Why is any of this actually valuable if it's just invisible computer code? It boils down to the exact same reason fiat paper money has value. Trust. But the properties people are trusting here are completely different. They are trusting mathematically enforced scarcity. They know for a fact that a system like Bitcoin has a strictly limited supply that no government can just endlessly inflate. They trust the proven, rock-solid security of the blockchain. And honestly, perhaps most importantly, they value censorship resistance. No bank can freeze your crypto wallet, and no state can block your transaction. So, from the ancient headache of trading apples for bread to standardizing gold, printing paper, and now beaming cryptographic math across the planet, money is clearly never static. Cryptocurrency is really just the latest disruption in our ongoing quest to reduce friction and redefine what ownership even means. So is it the final form of money, or is it just another stepping stone? That is the big question to ponder for the future of your wallet. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do.
And that's just one tiny big question. Imagine what's next. Subscribe, and let's keep wondering.